What is your mental model? Are you a citizen or an employee? There is no room today for Taylor's robotic android's perspective in 21st century management. Strategists today must ask, how can I create an organization with engagement in the workplace? The answer lies in part, how do your employees view themselves, as citizens or employees? Most of us working for an organization, whether they are in the public, private, or not-for-profit sectors, have a tipping point. This point must be recognized by the strategist. When will the workers switch off from feeling and acting like citizens and simply become employees? The word corporation comes in large part from the Latin word corpus, body. Greeks use the word demokratai, people's rule. Today, institutions would do well to remember their Latin and Greek genesis. As long as workers feel like citizens within a democratic organization, as long as they feel they can make a difference, as long as they are heard, as long as they feel they're part of the team, then strategists will have little difficulty implementing strategies. However, when these workers feel they are not respected, not listened to, viewed as liabilities, not assets by management, and toil in fear of the consequences of mistakes, then it will not be long until the tipping point is reached and these citizens will adopt the mental model of employees. Employees only work for paydays on the 1st and 15th and will fulfill Taylor's view that they will devote considerable amount of time to studying just how slowly they can work and still convince the employer they're going at a good pace. In this event, the employees have switched off their imaginations and they are no longer engaged in the workplace. At the core is trust. Without it, an organization of employees will not survive long. An organization needs a broad spectrum of business partners. Another new mental model for the strategist is to recognize that the pace of change and the evolving demands of customers are such that firms no longer can depend only on internal capabilities to meet the external needs, nor can they depend on tightly coupled relationships with a handful of business partners. The new mass collaboration is changing how companies and societies harness knowledge and capability to innovate and to create value. A new kind of business is emerging, one that opens its doors to the world, co-innovates with everyone, especially their customers, share resources that were previously closely guarded, harnesses the power of many collaborations, and behaves not as a multinational, but as something new, a truly global firm. There is need for more fluid network systems in our organizational design. The past hierarchy organizational structures are a thing of the past. Draw a circle of networks. It is about the whole system. It cannot be about those people and us people. It must be transformational recognition and embracement that no longer will we tell you, but rather it will be we need you. Again, a thought from our friend Sun Tzu. Think like water.
Military tactics are likened to water, for water in its natural course runs from high places and hastens downwards.
I want you to think of your organization and its life cycles ebbing and flowing as a result of the turbulence in its ecosystem. It is an absolute necessity to be proactive in understanding your firm's life cycle, keeping in mind the challenges of today's disruptive technology. As a strategist, you must accommodate these ebbs and flows in order to exploit the opportunities they present or to mitigate the damage to your firm. Think of them as icebergs, a very real danger to your small sailing craft. Here is a new mental model for crafting strategy. Strategists need to think differently about crafting strategy. The industrial age models discussed earlier would generally have you develop a 5-year plan with an accompanying cash flow projections. Management would spend a great deal of effort collecting and analyzing data, information, and knowledge to undertake this task. But let me put this question to you. In today's turbulent ecosystem, how much reliance can be placed on the economic variables in your firm's ecosystems 5 years from today? Let me ask you, how robust you think your financial projections will be in 12 months? Yet the first thing the banker requires when asking for a loan is a copy of the firm's business plan and financial projections for the next 5 years. You get the point. Old mental model. Today's strategists, when crafting their planned strategies and responding to their emergent strategies, must be prepared to adapt quickly to its ecosystem as it presents itself. Strategies are formulated having full regard to the organizational values and principles. We will discuss these and corporate culture later in the course. As a strategist, you must identify the organization's long-term vision, possibly 10 years out, to include a mantra. Using an analogy, running an enterprise is like sailing a small craft. The vision is your long-term beacon as you cross the economic turbulent water. You will be required to continue to adjust the boat's jib to stay true to your course. Sometimes you'll reach what we call a strategic inflection point, a major crossroad, a situation that indicates the current strategy course no longer works and that wholesale changes are necessary. Using our analogy, this requires a major shift in the direction of our small sailboat. It may well be as a result of our frequent monitoring and adapting the planned and subsequent emergent strategies that the plan is substantially working. Therefore, in this case, only minor adjustments will be needed to the jib, small tweaks here and there to stay aligned with the long-term vision. Reflect for a moment on the two axes of effort and time. Strategists will expend a great deal of time and effort on developing short-term strategies and the accompanying implementation materials. Your financials will be robust. In the short term, strategists will develop rapid short-term prototypes. While the time and effort expended on the financials and other influencing variables 5 years out, while considered in this turbulent ecosystem, are not robust and should not consume much of the firm's scarce resources. Finally, we do expend a great deal of time and effort in getting the vision right. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Have a clear, high-level, long-term direction for your organization. Strategists constantly zoom in and zoom out. They're testing, they're refining, they're implementing real-time metrics, and they're asking, what are the organizational blocks preventing even faster acceleration? Unlike traditional strategic planning, generally undertaken annually, today's strategists must review their strategies in real time. In some cases, monthly would be appropriate. Today's strategists must demonstrate the competencies required by nimble, transformational organizations requiring wholesale or retail changes as the ecosystem shifts. One such competency is the notion of left brain versus the right brain in the conceptual age. Another new mental model, another snapshot of light in the darkness, is found in Daniel Pink's bestseller, A Whole New Mind, Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. This book delivers good news and bad news. The bad news is people who make a living based on outdated, linear, left-brain thinking skills, that is, traditional computer programmers, engineers, or accountants, may soon find their jobs in jeopardy, if they haven't already. This includes industrial-age management practices. The good news is anyone can develop and master right-brain traits upon which both personal and professional success will depend in the dawning of what Pink has termed the conceptual age, an age that shifts organizations from the information age to an age that highly values creativity, innovation, design, storytelling, teamwork, and empathy. In short, organizations that concentrate on the cognitive and creative assets. For many people, Pink recognizes his vision of the future may seem dreadful and very threatening. Those who earn their living as left-brain thinkers, that is, lawyers, accountants, engineers, and others, may struggle a bit more to adapt to the coming change. But fear not, Pink says, the right brain, soft skill abilities he writes about are fundamental human attributes, which are sure to come back to us with practice. After a few generations of the information age, our right brain muscles may have atrophied, but they're not gone. Those who can regenerate these soft attributes first will have a huge competitive advantage. Are you right brain or left brain? Let me poke the bear for a moment. Government and law have suppressed the feminine in society and pushed people into left-brain thinking. Do you agree? Have a look at this link and then post your thoughts on the discussion page.
The left brain deals with logic, details, facts, patterns, practicality, science, and math, as the right brain deals with feeling, intuition, symbols, images, risk-taking, philosophy, and religion. With a deliberate push for government-controlled educational curriculums, generation after generation of the youth are being taught to focus only on the facts, figures, and numbers. Repetition is used to train children subconsciously to accept what they're learning. Children aren't rewarded for questioning the validity of the information they receive. They are ridiculed. However, the children who blindly accept the information as true and merely regurgitate the information on command when it is time to take a test, those children go on to become the decision makers in our government, law, medicine, business, and every other occupation with power and prestige. The most detrimental effect of being pushed away from holistic thinking with the full brain into a strictly left brain thought is what is known as the suppression of the feminine. Every male and female have both feminine and masculine qualities. It has nothing to do with man or woman. These are represented by the left and right brain, yin and yang, black and white, light and dark, and most every other duality. Both are vital to our spiritual and physical health. In ancient Egypt, the female was the rightful heir to the throne. The male she chose to marry became pharaoh. This depicted the goddess tradition that has been destroyed to make way for a patriarchal, male-dominated society we see enforced in every major denomination. In suppressing the feminine of every society and pushing the people to strictly left-brain thinking, the natural ability for humanity to feel earthly, cosmic, and personal energy became lost. Traditions that were passed on through shamans, witch doctors, magicians, psychics, and seers of all kind became outlawed and ridiculed and given a stigma of something out of a Hollywood movie. Every religion explains that we are children of God and have godliness inside of us. If you erase the anthropomorphized God and understand that God is nothing more than the spiritual web that connects all things, all religious scriptures begin to make much more sense. Our bodies are merely vessels to contain our spirit, to gather experience for the divine mind. This is how evolution is possible. It is scientifically proven that all species are evolving into more complex beings. Innate knowledge or racial memory within all species is the understanding of newborns of all kinds to automatically know specific details and traits that the mother does not have to teach them. Therefore, innate knowledge helps every species naturally evolve towards more complex organisms. Lyle Watson claims that it was a Japanese scientist who observed the 100th monkey effect in 1952. In this observation, he discovered that a certain portion or percentage of monkeys learned or developed a new trait. The knowledge became an innate ability in that species. This is further testimony to a collective consciousness among species.
In the conceptual age, you will have a requirement to transform from manager to leader and back again. I find with some regularity, people use the terms management and leadership interchangeably. They are different. Here's Carly.
And there is a difference between management and leadership. Management is the production of acceptable results within known constraints and conditions. Very important. But management is not leadership. Leadership is all about changing the order of things. But Machiavelli said something very interesting about change. Machiavelli said there is nothing so difficult or so dangerous as to undertake to change the order of things. And that is true. It is difficult and it is sometimes dangerous because people resist and people are afraid. And that is why only leaders can drive change.
Indeed, here's a new mental model for some of you. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. Strategists need to understand the notions of management and leadership. Imagine for a moment two overlapping circles. There are areas of mutual overlap, and there are areas that are the sole preserve of each field. Management, for the most part, tends to be a science, while leadership tends to be an art. The degree of overlap between the two fields adjusts to meet the requirements of the organization. The science of management can in large part be taught by business schools, The processes, the systems, the models, and the competencies are generally well canvassed by management schools. For example, in this first unit, you will be provided a little red toolbox to assist you in analyzing and crafting strategy. Most of you will have little difficulty with the science aspect of management by applying tools and crafting a workable strategy. In many ways, it's like baking a cake. Just follow the recipe. Management competencies are grounded in large part on the 20th century models, as we've discussed, while leadership are grounded in the new organizational concepts and notions emerging in the 21st century. The science of crafting a plan is relatively straightforward. The challenge for strategists lies mainly in the implementation of the plan. To do this, you need to transform and demonstrate competencies, not just those of a manager, but also of a strategic leader. This ability to demonstrate effective leadership is the sine qua non for strategic perspective. Recall for a moment from your earliest memories of when you were a young child. Do you remember walking in a small cluster of little girls along the sidewalk? One little girl was out in front, one was behind, one was on the left, one was on the right, and there was a little girl at the center. She had something, some unique quality that the rest of you at age 4 recognized. For some reason, you wanted to stand or walk closer to her. You didn't want to tag along from behind the pack. You wanted to be next to her. There was, at this very early age, some aspect of inherent leadership recognized in this little girl, some attribute she was born with. This is not to say that certain aspects of leadership cannot be taught. Indeed, when you view the overlapping circles, you will note there are aspects of science in leadership, those skills and competencies that can be taught. But in large part, leadership is an art that is inherent, and other leadership competencies you can grow with practice. It is important for strategists when developing their leadership competencies to commence with knowing themselves. It is about understanding your aptitude for leadership, your attitude, and the skills you have or need to acquire to effectively lead. There is a transformational process, a new mental model you must acquire if you want to move from the traditional role of manager and or an administrator within your organization is to be recognized as a leader. Throughout your training, you have acquired, as a science, left brain function, a collection of data. You have acquired some information, and as a result, you have gained some knowledge about your role as a manager or administrator in the workplace. Over time, by collecting data, information, and knowledge, you have moved up the corporate ladder from administrator to manager. Most people stop there. As a strategist, by undertaking critical thinking and reflective thought, you can acquire wisdom, a right brain function. And with wisdom comes recognition and a transformational shift from a manager to a leadership role within your organization. It sounds simple, but this new mental model is the key to your success within your organization. How many managers today take the time to close the door and reflect upon the data, information, and knowledge crossing their desk? How many read the daily news and reflect upon the data, information, knowledge on the front page and how that will impact the business section of the paper? How many ask the so what questions? The answer? A few. So then, the strategic plan, the roadmap has been crafted. A tipping point requiring a shift by you from reliance primarily on management skills to leadership occurs. This is not a bad thing. Just be aware of the shift from the left brain linear thinking to the right brain leadership conceptual soft skills thinking. You can, as we have said, strengthen these conceptual skills through practice. Remember, knowledge is power, but only if you use it. It will differentiate you and your degree from others. It will position you for leadership. Form over substance. Another notion that gives rise to new mental models is form over substance. The exponential growth in innovation and disruptive technology requires strategists to monitor and indeed be a futurist in order to anticipate the form their industry is likely to adapt. There is a great first mover advantage for the strategist who gets this notion right. Certainly the stories of Michael Dell and a young man who introduced Napster illustrates perfectly how entrepreneurs with little neither capital nor significant formal business education were able to reflect on new technology and as a result innovate and transform their industry. There are many examples we can turn our mind to. Banking. We all agree we require the substance, banking, but do we require a bank on every street corner? The form. Automobiles. With web convergence technology, we have the ability to build our automobiles in a virtual factory and have it delivered to our doors 3 days later. Do we require acres of rusting iron in car lots? Is this an old metal model? Is it the appropriate form to market automobiles? Clearly, the print media is in trouble today because the younger demographics prefers to access their information online rather than acquiring hard copy in the form of a newspaper or magazine. Radio stations increasingly must fragment their offerings to meet the demand of the customer. The traditional business model of radio tower and station and a few selected people only permitted to deliver the product that is government regulated at a significant cost is now being threatened by new metal model. That form of democratization of the internet where you and I can set up our own blogs, music stations, online newspapers, and target specific segment of a fragmented market. This model is not government regulated, has no licensing costs, clearly a competitive advantage. See the course site for links to the Drudge Report and the internet newspaper widely read, the Huffington Post. For online radio stations, you'll also find the links. They have no government licenses, no towers, no stations, and are updated moment to moment. We can all do this. These internet radio stations proudly announce they are run by real people, not generated by computers or focus groups. The disruptive results, as you can imagine, is that this reality is participating great change in how you and I need to market and advertise our services and products. Does it make sense for your institution to take out full-page ads in the national and or regional papers to attract students or customers? As a strategist, take a reflective moment now and think critically about the current form of your industry and its substance. And ask how you might transform the industry or your organization in order to exploit the wonderful opportunities presented by innovation and disruptive technology. As a strategist, remember, just the act of observing can change what is observed. As we get close to winding down this first part of this session, here are a few closing thoughts. So we understand a new strategic perspective is required. Globalization with the impact of technology creates fundamental discontinuity. Recall our guest Mr. Ken Stafford's words today on the topic. Wealth from now on, monetizing ideas, is no longer limited to industrial age factors of production as espoused by Marx. The internet may be the closest thing to a working anarchy the world has ever seen. Nobody owns it, nobody runs it, and most of its billion or so citizens get along for the most part by self-imposed online etiquette, not by rules and regulations. During the next decade, technology will continue to radically change how we manage organizations. New powerful tools will be used to coordinate and align human effort. As a result, increasingly strategists are required to adapt new organizational models exploiting technology that provide mechanisms for collaboration both horizontally and vertically. This new emerging technology must be understood and quickly adopted by strategists. Be an early adapter. Unfortunately, Orwellian governments are emerging and seeking ways to impose rules and regulations to control thought. We have a duty to prevent this as leaders. We recognize the need to reinvent our 100-year-plus old management models. For example, if we are to add value to each individual act, how are we going to measure it? How are we going to engage our employees? As strategists, you need to understand there are 3 scarce resources in an organization. They are discretionary spending, talent, and the ability to focus critically and reflectively on issues and challenges. This is not about how you get people to serve the organization, an old mental model, and a dangerous mental model. Rather, it's how you get people to want to engage and contribute their passion and competencies. You need to encourage critical thinking and enable self-directed people to make subjective judgments based on their own special knowledge. Today's strategists need to harness the energies of their colleagues. Remember, each of us add value by each act we undertake within the organization. Remember to acquire new mental models. You need to turn the mirror inward, learning to unearth your internal pictures of the world. Bring them to the surface and hold them up rigorously to scrutiny. As we proceed through this course, keep in mind speed is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness. Travel by unexpected routes. Strike him where he has taken no precautions. Be revolutionary when you craft your international business strategies, and be prepared to think differently. A good book on the topic is Gary Hamel's bestseller, Leading the Revolution. Go to the course site and you'll find the reference information. Some thoughts on strategic thinking. Although it is not possible to make everyone at the company into a brilliant strategic thinker, it is possible to achieve widespread recognition of what strategic thinking is. This understanding is based on some relatively simple rules. They are seeking hard, fact-based, logical information. Question everybody's assumptions. Be unwilling to expend resources. A strategist is always looking for an opportunity to win at low or better yet, no cost. Remember the thoughts of Sun Tzu to win all without fighting, and later on we'll discuss a rosebush analogy which also shares the same thought. Strategic thinking, finally, is usually indirect and unexpected rather than head-on and predictable. Clausewitz versus Sun Tzu, that approach should be like water. Much of this session I have provided as a podcast for your listening pleasure. Remember, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. It is my goal for this course that each of you will commence viewing your ecosystem and crafting strategies for your organization, standing on new terrain, and viewing the variables free of biases and arriving at informed findings and demonstrate a strategic perspective. This is the end of Part A. What follows is Part B, your little red toolbox.